kill you.
Hey everybody, and welcome back to Zaku Talk. I am your host, Patrick Scala, and with me this season, as always, is...
Bob Skerry, voiceover artist.
No adjective this week, Bobo. I don't know if that's insulting to you or not, but that's the way we're rolling.
That's perfectly fine. I am not needing of one.
Very well. Joining me this week is the unadjectived Bob Skerry, and, of course, on the audio boards is Lev Van Rensselaer. And this season, we do, of course, G versus Wing. But before we dive into that, episode 15, let's first talk about, Bob, how's your week been going?
I have had some ups and downs. I definitely had a few days where mental health needed me to just sit down and sit back. I only bring it up on this podcast for those who have been regularly listening here, because we need to normalize mental health, and not stigmatize it as we have for several years now. So I'm sorry if it makes you uncomfortable, but we got to get used to that discomfort. Otherwise, some good things happened. I have a person in the voiceover industry that has made a letter of introduction for me to someone from a major house, and I'm hoping that it may not lead to a job, but to at least get some more information on what I can be doing to better my place in the industry. What about you, Skeyhill?
Not too much over here, prepping an animation film, as you may remember, doing some location scouts for that film, in fact, this week. Wrote a little short story version of the script to kind of help with the grant writing process and to kind of help give some clues and perspectives for the key crew members. And beginning some prep work also on a pilot that will shoot some time in the winter, it looks like, depending on what the pandemic how the pandemic changes in the future.
Is that pilot the one that you had me read over recently?
No.
Okay.
This is a pilot somebody else has written, and I'm working with that showrunner, and this is more of like a quirky... I've nudged it to get more of a quirky Twin Peaks kind of vibe in it, so it could be fun and playful. Yes, so this week we have, as I mentioned, episode 15 of both G Gundam and Gundam Wing. Bob, would you like to give us a summary of episode 15 of G Gundam?
Certainly. Episode 15, Warrior's Crest. Goodbye, Shuffle Alliance. Or, in Japanese, Senshi no Shogo, Saraba, Shuffle Dome. A Death Army soldier comes to tell Domon that he is to meet with Master Asia alone at the Tokyo Tower. Domon goes, but along the way is stopped by his 4 friends. They fight him, but he eventually makes it to where Master Asia is. A fight ensues, and as Domon's 4 friends attempt to interfere with Master Asia and Domon's fight, the Shuffle Alliance stop them from doing so and begin to fight them. The Shuffle Alliance realizes the 4 people they are fighting are in fact their successors. In an effort to save them and cleanse them of DG cells, they give their lives, passing on the Shuffle Crests to them. Master Asia mocks their sacrifice, enraging Domon, who activates his super mode, driving Master Asia away.
Yes, I would agree with that summary. Over here in Gundam Wing, we have To the Battleground and Antarctica. Kessen no Bashu Nankyoku-e. Which of those is Antarctica?
Nankyoku-e sounds like it would be Antarctica, and I'm going to do a quick search on that while you give the description.
Is it because that E is like a locative type of preposition or particle?
Nankyoku appears to be the name for Antarctica, as I'm just now typing it into Google. Nankyoku, for those of us who don't have the ability to do hiragana or katakana. It is apparently the direct transliteration for Antarctica.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And so Kessen no Basho is itself battleground together?
Yeah, Kessen seems to be something involving battle.
Okay.
So, yeah, I would say that the translation is almost direct as far as if there's a comma, in your line, it would, of course, separate those 2 points.
Yeah.
So there you go.
No commas, but okay, very good. 9 finds Hiro and Troa and takes them to Antarctica, where Zex is completing the reconstruction of the Wing Gundam for a hopeful rematch. When Inspector Oct, who last episode ordered the destruction of that Gundam, arrives to expose Zex as a traitor, Noin and Troa must destroy the search parties before they can reach Zex. And that's where we're at this week. So, Bob, in our episode of G Gundam, you will need to explain to me anything and everything involving the Shuffle Alliance, because I don't think I got any of it. Is this is this a thing that would make a lot of sense if I were like a native of Japan or a frequent viewer of this genre?
Perhaps. So taking away the direct idea of these individuals known as the Shuffle Alliance at this point, the idea is that they are masters within their martial art, and they carry along this apparent sacred order of people who have watched over war and battle since time immemorial. The crests and titles seem to pass on from generation to generation in order to have people keep battles as clean and as decisive as possible. That is my take from it. And these individuals are just meant to be a representation of the alliance of those styles, those ideals, in order to ensure that warriors may have conflict recognized by way of their soul. I don't know if they did anything involving that with your episode, but one of the key things they were trying to drive home was the idea that your martial art should translate the individuality and the belief of you and your soul through your fists. And so that seems to be something that is hampering Domo, and he feels he is not able to get across his meaning, his communication through his martial art, because he is being held back by his care for Master Asia, that connection that he built with him, as well as his frustration with having to have all this weight being carried by him. We see when he transforms into that super mode, his transformation into what most people would see as a samurai, both in terms of the visual as well as the actions taken by him. He goes stoic. He tries to drive through with the fiery anger within him, hence why he's walking through the fire towards the end of his bout with Master Asia. And you can see that anger is what fuels him. So, but he is caught between that anger and his desire to be understood by those around him. That's why he was so desperate when he couldn't understand why his friends in the past few episodes could not understand him in terms of words and had trouble being aggressive in his fighting. He was constantly on the defensive, if you recall.
Yes.
Okay. So now that things have been cleared up, showing that the DG cells seem to be affecting the minds of these individuals, that may be addressed in the coming episodes. I know at least one character is going to have an episode focused on them and their fear of losing control again. But that's another story, another time. Getting back to your initial question about the Shuffle Alliance, so it's an opportunity to see neophytes have to take on the reins of being masters, adults, and heroes. So we are getting this opportunity to see the torch being passed directly. The idea of the sacrifice from these 4 individuals is meant to I had this thought while I was watching, because it's the first time I've recognized it. The 4 youths, they may have been the horsemen of the apocalypse, or at least that was their intent. And to see these 4 individuals who were their elders, who were equal or greater than them, passing on this torch, they are like archangels. They are trying to purify these individuals to help pull back the apocalypse clock.
So real quick, because you reminded me, talking about Domon, the opening credits seems to have a lot of imagery of him with a sword. Have we seen him use a sword before? You had mentioned he turned sort of like a samurai when he goes Super Saiyan, but I don't know if he had a sort of a sword there yet either. Have I just forgotten the sword? It seems to be a big part of the opening.
It hasn't been prominent, but anytime he wields his beam saber, it is done as one would wield a katana, and is handled as such because he carries 2 of them, one shorter, one longer, meant to represent the wakizashi as well as the katana. If I'm remembering correctly, because I don't think he has like the dagger-sized tanto. But he does wield them as a samurai would. They are his preferred weapon of choice, as he does not carry a beam rifle of any kind. If he does have any shots that are not the mystical energy blasts or whatever that we will see over time, they are from his Vulcan, his V shape on his helmet, which is just standard issue across Gundam timelines. So yes, he is a swordsman if he is not being a direct martial artist. He learned fist to fist and so on by Master Asia, and we can assume that whether by Master Asia or his own personal training, he learned the soul of the samurai.
Yes, go on.
He did have the not spirit finger. The shining finger sword is probably how they transliterated it for you when you saw him do the initial super mode back in episode 6. It will come up a few more times, but it is not his primary mode of fighting. It's just that as a representative of Neo Japan and as a Japanese man, he is going to carry that as his flavor compared to the others.
Yeah, I don't remember them naming it back then, but it was a while ago, so who knows? But like, yeah, in the mobile suit, I remember it. But outside the mobile suit, does he carry swords with him? Does he use it? Because I think I mostly seen him do punching and kicking.
He mostly does punching and kicking.
Okay.
I believe you will see a sword come up more often after the coming episode. I know that the individual we are introduced to as of the coming episode will at some point offer him a sword, and that will become a part of his storyline from that point forward. So we've just gotten a lot of early imagery. We haven't seen him carry the sword as of yet. I do believe he will be carrying a sword sometime within the next 5 or so episodes.
Okay, great. That was it just seemed very prominent, and I didn't really click with me that I had never seen him actually in person carry the sword he's using in here, so I wondered why they wanted to draw my attention to it. So as for the Shuffle Alliance themselves, I guess the first thing is they're sort of like this Illuminati of fighting, kind of working in the background, pulling strings. So I think I know how we kind of view that now, but in 94, are we less suspicious of an organization like that? Are we supposed to be like, okay, good,
no, even more so back in the 90s.
So we're supposed to we'll be like, all right, how do we feel about these people? Are they on our side? Are they not? Are we supposed to have that tension?
I would say, while I see where you're coming to the idea of this Illuminati concept, it's more a matter of masters being above the common level of understanding war and battle and tactics and so on. Rather than national borders, it is the ideal and idea of battle and conflict in a unagitated, pure form, one that does not necessarily lean towards overcoming for the sake of overcoming, not war-minded, but the idea of communication through battle, something that I might bring up to you with the idea of trays when we get over to Gundam Wing. This idea that in order for communication and understanding to come into play, fighting does have to occur, and to interfere with that and only use it as a means of oppression will cause greater harm than not allowing people to act at all, or to act in a way that would be less than honorable.
So they don't manipulate conflicts behind the scenes. That's not what they're doing. They didn't set up.
They're like referees. They are unofficial referees that are attempting to ensure that the point of fighting is maintained and that no one is going to use the conflict as a means of self-interest and domination.
Okay, and the Shuffle Alliance couldn't hurt the other people because of the crests or the cells?
Because of the crests. I before they acknowledged the crests glowing in front of them down in the pit, I at first was wondering whether or not it was a cell-based thing, a DG cell thing. But no, they were fighting their successors, and it meant that the crests not being a necessarily manufactured thing, but something, again, in that mystic spiritual level, had chosen these ones to be their successors. And in order to make sure that this power was not going to be manipulated in some way, in order to make sure that the means and methods of the Shuffle Alliance would continue on, they sacrificed their selves in order to heal these 4 individuals from the DG cells that were going to eventually take over their bodies and turn them into monsters.
So the crests are giving these people like heightened powers, and they're gaining them through their martial prowess?
Through their martial prowess and through the expression of their souls and beliefs. They are all representative of different philosophies and ideals in martial combat. If you'll notice, very much like the kids that are now gaining these crests, the predecessors are all representations of different philosophies, methodologies, and ideals within these various martial arts that they seem to practice. So the idea being that I don't know if they're going to go into it, but my takeaway, my Bob Scary VOA's personal takeaway, is that they are trying to show that these crests are attracted to individuals who are the purest form of various angles of honor and righteousness and perseverance and the like, that are often associated with the better parts of learning a martial art and becoming a warrior.
So are these crests sentient? Are they picking people? How are successors being chosen?
To that, I cannot say.
Okay.
That is not something that I have for my reading, and it is something that I'm hoping to pick up as we continue through the story.
And are there multiple potential successors, and because these guys died helping them, they get to be the successors, or is there always the one-to-one thing?
As I'm to understand it, it is a one-to-one thing, generation to generation. So the fact that these 4 individuals that we've seen at the beginning of the series have played such a part, it may be that Domon, as the King of Hearts, was attracted to these individuals because they were going to be part of the next generation. Whether or not Domon would ever understand and acknowledge that, and whether or not anybody else had a sense of that coming into play, that I can't say. But I am willing to believe that the mysticism behind this idea of the Shuffle Alliance and their crests dictates that per a generation, a new wave of individuals will take on these crests. And it is up to them to maintain this balance, this order, for as long as they can exist. And when the next generation reveals themselves, they're meant to take these individuals on either as pupils or, in the case of this very dire situation, sacrifice themselves to then pass it on in that way. So that is why we didn't see Master Asia die in order to pass on his crest to Domon Kash.
Okay, so they can be passed on by choice, but which Master Asia did. But these guys weren't protected by a crest because they didn't have it yet. They were protected by the idea of the crest.
To a degree, the best way that I can probably explain it is these individuals were having a lessened effect compared to what the Shuffle Alliance's attacks, as we saw them, would have had on others. And this is due to the fact that either by way of the mysticism of the crests or by way of them showing their capabilities in comparison to these seniors, they are more capable and willing and I'm losing the word I want to use here, but they are the perfect adversaries to represent a one-to-one match for the given crests that they have been given. To what those crests mean, I don't know if that will come up in the text, but we will certainly find out as we press forward.
Okay, I think those are all of my questions about how that worked. Is it sort of relevant? Are they like, okay, we set it up and now you are the Shuffle Alliance, so go to town? Or do they deal more with kind of the mechanics behind it?
Because it has been a long time, and I, much as you've said in earlier episodes here, the bulk of my memories are at the three main points of the story. Mm-hmm. The very beginning, the Guiana Highlands, which we'll get to in some time, mm-hmm. and the fight that will eventually lead to the climax. The space in between these three islands is left kind of hazy. So to that, I have to say, I don't know how deep we're going into the crests beyond a designation and a responsibility to be carried by these individuals. I know that they will aid in some cases, but much like the one-time bubblegum shield thing that we saw in the first episode from Rain's little compact, I don't know how often we're going to see them be either shoehorned in versus being a major plot point. That is something that I would rather, instead of looking it up at this moment, find out as we continue to watch.
Sounds fine to me. The episode also feels a little unfortunately titled to me.
It's a common thing in Japan.
Yes. We talked
they
about
give
that
you the heads up that if a certain member or a certain group is going to leave in some way, whether that's by death or by going on a plane to America or whatever, they will give you the notice so that if they were to come back, as per what we saw of them during this episode, they will not. But if we were to see them come back, it would be another celebratory thing that they would find a way to wedge into a title later on. We are not saying goodbye to the Shuffle Alliance in the way that you might think, where it's, oh God, all the crests are gone. We only have the King of Hearts. It's just goodbye the previous iteration, you know?
Okay. And the episode begins, Domon is talking with the Shuffle Alliance, and then we find that 1,000 of these mobile suits, the Dark Army, are just hanging out, and they have a message for Domon. Were they there the whole time? Did they silently sneak up like the dinosaurs in Jurassic Park 3?
That's a deep cut because I haven't watched Jurassic Park 3, I think, since it was in theaters.
Yeah, me too, but it's the most annoying part of the movie since them being loud approachers was the whole point of the first movie.
Yeah. Oh, I agree. So I would say it is not necessarily that they should have been heard approaching as much as because of, again, some of the demi-supernatural elements of the Devil Gundam and his Death Army. We can either presume that they bore their way through the earth nearby, or they've been on standby between all these buildings, which is why everybody is congregated right at the Diet building.
Okay.
So that is the way that I would perceive that. You could go the Jurassic Park 3 route and say, okay, they came on them because they were so deep in their conversation they didn't realize what was happening nearby. That's up to you whether or not you want to have the good thing or the 90s cinema thing. I want people, especially you, Skeyhill, to keep in mind how Master Asia was as he held the head, possibly skull, of the Joker Gundam. Mm-hmm. I feel that scene, with my having seen the series before, holds a lot of weight that they may not really acknowledge as we get towards the end of the series. And you'll have to have had some of that memory as we get to that point. So just as you've had me make a couple of minor notes here and there, I'm going to give that to you. Keep that scene in your mind.
I can do that. Audience, you do as well. What I have forgotten, as they were sort of discussing it a lot this episode, why I just completely forget. Why is Domon trying to stop his brother?
Domon is trying to stop his brother because he is using an illegal machine, the Ultimate Gundam, which has become the Devil or Dark Gundam, depending on which way you're watching, that has three incredible superpowers to regenerate, to evolve, and to multiply, I'm to understand, which is why we're seeing the Death Army and the like. So this particular machine has been influenced in some way, whether that's because of Kyoji or the way that it was made or what have you, to become the Devil Gundam. It is influencing the Earth and causing death, decay, ruin. It is, for all intents and purposes, a Gundam based on an apocalyptic end. And that is why they have to go and stop him, not just for the sake of Neo Japan trying to pull this back and not make them look awful, but also to try and keep the peace on Earth, however that might be.
So I guess, yeah, that was what was interesting to me, is because it seems like nobody cares about Earth. Is Domon from Earth Japan or the colony Japan?
I know that he spent time on Earth. Again, if you look at the period of time that he spent with Master Asia, talking about bearing your soul through your fists, that was all done on Earth. That was not done on the colonies. Okay. So knowing that they came, that Domon came back to the colonies in order to see his family, it could be that he started being raised up there and then found his way down and come back up. I don't know how much of this ecology is at the very beginning of the story, that how much that is meant compared to, just keep people alive, don't let them be killed, and, ruin and woe. But it will come more into play as we get to this second act that we are coming upon. I would say that everything up to the coming episode is all considered sort of an act one, this whole 4-part episode, or 5 at this point, maybe. That is all going to be our bridge between act 1 and act 2. Okay.
That makes sense to me. But so Domon has some ties to this Earth, but something like Kakarot, Carrot, he just wants to save face for Neo Japan. He's less interested in the Earth.
Yes, exactly. It's more a matter of similar to Oct, a matter of making sure to maintain position and save face for whether it be his nation or himself.
Okay. And the last interesting thing, because it kind of made me think of a Gundam Wing moment. He goes Super Saiyan. He does this very powerful attack. It looks like it destroys Tokyo Tower and a good chunk of the city. Is that something that he has remorse for later? Is that something that kind of weighs on him as the show goes on?
It's funny that you bring that up. I was talking with somebody else recently about G Gundam, and there is this period of time that we'll be seeing soon where we have effectively a before and after effect of Gundams coming and going and it affecting that area. I think that this is the first good instance since our time in the very first episode where we're effectively destroying the Colosseum, a major artistic and architectural place that should have some heft to it, some meaning, being disregarded. We're going to start paying more attention to that as we press forward. So definitely keep that in mind. We're going to start seeing the idea of showing mindfulness and care to not just what man has made, but also what the Earth has made. The ecology is going to become more and more prevalent as we press forward from this point.
Okay. Yes, they did damage the Colosseum. They already damaged Statue of Liberty. So that makes sense to me. That's sort of it. It was mostly just a lot of confusion about the Shuffle Alliance mechanics and how that all sort of worked and played out. I think I agree with you. We seem to be jumping off to our second act now. So everything else sort of worked fine in the episode for what you want to do to set that up.
While you see it as a bit of confusion, it is an opportunity for us to create this bridge between Act 1 and Act 2. All of these questions are very worthwhile, and without having some of the information being fed to us, it is fair to be like, what's happening though? Some of it is going to have to be inference, because unfortunately it may not be a feature, but I like to think of it as such. To have to meditate on why these things are occurring, what could be the reasoning. A lot of what happens in this series led to me having to do more research, both in my youth and it being like very surface level, to re-entering this world as we've done this podcast. I've had to do more and more research as to why certain things are the way they are and have to infer pieces of information. So,
well, for me, yeah, and I don't mind sort of when things do that, but I guess my bigger issue with the Shuffle Alliance, not issue, but my confusion was I just didn't know how it worked. So it seems to be a new set of rules to this world that don't feel out of place per se, because we've already kind of had the Street Fighter kind of stuff going on. So I wasn't like, what? Where is it? But it was just more of like, well, what are the crests? What are they doing? How does this work? Why is this relate to how Gundams work? How does this play with technology? I just didn't know what sort of the rules of that thing were, because they seemed to be new for what they were doing.
No, that's fair. I'm going to say this. There's going to be a moment in the final episodes that will probably just run the thinnest and most wriggly hair across your ass because they're going to forego an entire concept that seems to be established as of episode 6. And they're just going to run away with it within the last handful of episodes. So be prepared for that, you and listeners alike. But again, sometimes you have to accept that if you're incorporating mysticism into your machine show, things are going to get wonky.
Sure, that could be fun. All right, yeah, we can go on to Gundam Wing now. What was standing out to you this week?
So the first thing was noticing that we are seeing these two create a kind of relationship now between Trowa and Duo that I thought we would have seen more.
You mean Hero?
With Trowa and I keep losing his name. Ketra.
I guess I don't know. You just said a relationship between Trowa and Duo, but do you mean Trowa and Hero?
Yeah, I did, because Duo is the hero in my mind, and I was trying to think, how long has it been since we've seen Duo, Ketra, and Wu Fei? It's been a few episodes.
Mm-hmm, yeah, depending on which one. Yeah, it's been a long time since we saw Duo and Ketra. They got the first one after that incident in Siberia. An interesting thought that came to my mind this time was it's crazy how long it's been since we've seen the purportedly main character pilot the main Gundam. And it's gonna go on for a little longer. He's not gonna do it next episode either, spoilers. So I just kind of love the brazenness of all right, marketing wise, here's your main character, here's your main Gundam. They're not teaming up for a while. He's gonna pilot different Gundams. I kind of like it.
Yeah, I definitely thought that was interesting. I'm just trying to go from top of the episodes down.
Yeah,
so besides that, I thought that the whole Trowa bit where he apparently lifts a motorcycle so that way we could keep eyes off of Hero so he could jump in the back of that fruit truck when he was able to hop off onto a clothesline that was somehow just taut enough to be as a tight wire. And for him to casually walk across, he didn't do I'm going to counterbalance myself by putting my arms out or anything. He just walked with his hands in his pockets. That is the most anime bullshit.
Yeah.
And I say that with love and regret.
No, I was just about to say that too. It feels awkward kind of calling it out for doing anime stuff because it's an anime thing. But that whole sequence is just why? We're not in an anime world mostly. So why do we need to have this in there?
You say that, but as you brought it up, I was going to point out, I remember the first 3 episodes when I was calling out the anime as fuck bullshit.
Yeah, I know. Those are episodes I don't like.
But I'm just saying,
I like that we leave them.
It likes to remind
behind.
you, yeah, this could be a show, but we had to make it a animation because 1, it's Gundam, and 2, these kids.
I mean, I don't mind Gundam being an anime. I just like the tropes that some Westerners look down on anime for having. I sort of agree with and like it when they're not in my anime.
Whereas me, I am a person who enjoys some of the over-the-top aspects, not because they're so over-the-top and lol, wow, cartoons, Looney Tunes, all that jazz.
Yeah.
I like it because it is a kind of shorthand that offers a spectacle to give you the sense of whatever it is they're trying to present to you without it having to adhere to the purest rules of the real world, while at the same time not being anvil falls on head, walk away as a flat disc situation. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I can appreciate when a show will do that. If you give me a ninja show and you show me somebody who is standing on the very tip of a needle shaped spire,
yeah.
I'll buy that because you've already set up the rules and regulations for me that this is a mysticism based thing, so on and so forth. When you give me something like Your Real Robo and you expect me to take some of this over the top anime style stuff, I want to either believe some of the reality that comes with this. Like, it is hard for me to believe that a bone in Hero's leg is going to set properly when he uses a pair of wrenches and some gauze to make a makeshift splint. It's hard for me to take that compared to, oh God, we have to get him to the hospital right now so we can get a cast, even if it is a walking cast or some sort of a brace in order to be able to manage forward. That is the kind of thing I expect when I hear the term real in front of Robo. So to see anime bullshit of, I'm going to ride this motorcycle, do a magnificent flip off of it, never having seemingly done it before, to then land on a just perfectly taut, out of the blue, clothesline and walk away. I did like the Foley of the squeaking as he walked across it, just as a filmmaker's note. I liked that Foley. But to walk away with hands in pockets nonchalantly was jarring for this series up to this point.
Yeah, it's an action that if a French guy in G Gundam did it like elegantly, I'd be like, yeah, all right, that's fine. It feels very out of place
don't
here.
Worry, Neo Germany's going to do that next episode.
Oh, yeah, okay, great, perfect. I'd buy it. I don't like it here. The bone thing doesn't bother me in the episode that it's in, because he does have to do that thing and limp around the rest of the episode. Where I sort of tail off is that it doesn't. The next episode, which is later that day, he's fine again. So that annoys me. This episode does a correction where he's still wounded from this, exploding himself 6 episodes ago. And so like that, and that not only is there in the background, but also leads to a major plot point. So his earlier actions are now having results on his present, which I can appreciate.
Yeah, no, and I agree with that. I was going to mention a little later, but I'll bring it up now. I really do enjoy the fact that these 2 kids, because that's what they are, they're what, 14, 15 years old?
They're about 15, yep.
These 15-year-old kids are talking shop as though they were showing off their model toy or something like that, except they're using a giant machine for warfare and, the honor of the duelist and so on, as it seems to be for most of these kids as well as Zex. Mm-hmm. But to see how hard Hero has to work to manipulate the left arm that has the Gatling gun shield aspect, you see him stressing so hard to pull it. Troa trying to see if Hero is going to acknowledge that he's either too weak to be able to do this at the moment, needs to heal, or try to prove that you shouldn't be acting in this way with my machine. I'll let you choose how you want to interpret it in this episode. Listeners, I know Skeyhill already knows.
I know.
But to see him push himself beyond the limit to the point where later on in that same sequence, he has to jump down, get his cup of coffee or cocoa or whatever, wear the thing. And as he pulls on the jacket, you see him starting to bleed through his bandages because he's overstressed his body. This kid does not forgive himself because of this binary mentality of live or die. And that'll bring me back to Mrs. Noventa, unless there's anything you want to point out.
Yeah, so just real quick, I do also like this moment of Troa and Hiro kind of casually talking about their mobile suits, as you and Noin kind of remark on. And it's particularly poignant because they're the two who are the most normalized to combat in mobile suits. Most of their lives have been spent doing that compared to the other three. So it kind of makes sense that they would be able to have that moment together. But I think, and then I guess, Troa gives us, you brought up sort of honor-based dueling, and Zex has it, though his backstory and everything that that has happened and will happen kind of will paint something interesting as like, there's an interesting question we should kind of ask ourselves as we keep going through the series. It's like, why does Zex need these duels? Why does he need them to be fair? What is he getting out of them? And what is the effect on his mental state and persona because he desperately needs this, whatever it is, versus why Hiro might need it. And Troa doesn't actually seem to be interested in honorable duels at all. As the most seasoned mobile suit pilot, he's well aware, and he doesn't say it in the show, but in the manga version, and this is sort of the first time the manga has resumed since we had that big Siberia attack where Hiro destroyed himself, which is a little sad because I think he had some interesting moments between there and here. But in the manga, Troa said, when he falls out of the suit after killing Oct and Noin's like worried about him, he's just like, listen, it's kill or be killed. That's the rule. And so like he's, even though he had a little bit of an epiphany after Catherine convinced him to not kill himself, that sort of animal-like instinct he has when he's in the mobile suit is still hanging out there. But now you can go on to, Mrs. Noventa.
But I will also just acknowledge the fact that while he is the most adept as a fighter, I go back to my initial interpretations of Troa from the very beginning, where he does seem less human.
Yes.
And that may be due to the stunting of his emotional and mental health.
Yeah. So I just think he's less interested in honorable duels. He just wants to live.
Yeah, his actions as of the post-act of killing Oct, I don't know how much of that is physical strain or mental emotional strain when he's gripping onto that left hand and talking to himself about, why must I keep fighting like this?
Yes.
I will also note that for me, it was a bit comedic when he does make it to the ground after doing his tumble flip. And then there's effectively a 2-frame animation of him going from his knees to his face.
Yes.
It's just 1-2.
Not a big budget in this show, unfortunately.
No,
they do okay,
I get that, but it's things like that I appreciate about the old day animation. That's all.
Yeah, so I think you're right. I would lean more on the side of like emotional stress. I think it is a result of what Catherine has said to him, and he kind of went back to his instincts here. But now that he's in the immediate consequence of it, and having just gone through what he did with Catherine, now his part of himself that has been hidden is trying to come out and reconcile the different parts of him that were left behind in his youth.
Yeah. And I do appreciate that. But pivoting to Mrs. Noventa.
Yes.
I'll note that this is the first time in episode 2 episodes that we've seen oh God, I'm losing her name. Eyebrows. Relina.
Oh, we just saw her last episode, but we hadn't seen her for a few episodes before then.
Yes. I thought it was interesting that she's making her elder servant, butler, what have you.
Yeah, her Alfred. Yeah.
Do research for her on the computer, which just seems sort of, what is the word here? It seems unorthodox to have this man who seems to be in his 60s or 70s working a computer back in with like 95 looking PC stuff.
He's so
right?
well connected to the internet.
Incredibly well connected, and seems to have 1995 film hackers levels of capability for being able to look into documentation that should be hidden by Oz and the Alliance.
Yeah, I don't want to talk about this too much. This is going to be a part of my way we go. This whole
I'm not going to go too far with it, because I'm going to pivot to three things that stem from this.
Yeah.
One being the fact that Relina insists on making this contact with Mrs. Noventa, which will then lead to her taking this letter that was given to her with the hope that it would be unopened until given to Hiro, does a 180 and then 180 back to then open it. So she just does this little twirl, which I thought was bizarre, but then I reminded myself, this girl's like 14, 15 years old.
Yep.
This is exactly what they would do.
Yes. Uh-huh.
And so, like, again, it's that throw off of, while I would initially call that some anime bullshit, that's actually a real thing that I would see one of my nieces do in a few years.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like, okay, I shouldn't do it, but I gotta.
Yes.
Rip.
Mm-hmm. And I think it still works for where she is in the story now, and I don't mind her having these kind of setbacks still to her character, because everybody doesn't have to be cool all the time. It's not how people work. Oh,
it's not a negative thing. It's a positive thing.
Yeah,
I'm glad that they went with a reality.
I'm admiring that too.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So I liked that moment, and seeing how Mrs. Noventa has this weird calmness to her that will then throw me back to the beginning of the episode, how it seems that Hiro can't go on believing that it's okay. He knows and feels that it's not okay, but he won't take his own life, and nobody else seems to be willing to take it for him. So seeing that conflict as it presses forward, I hope that he eventually gets to read the letter himself, and that Relina doesn't just like, oh, I'm glad you're okay. I don't want that to be thrown away. I want him to, even if we don't get that same cutscene again, which I'm sure we won't, that he at least gets to have the letter, look at it, and either take it to heart or crumple it and throw it over his shoulder. Like, that means dick. But thirdly, it's weird to me that Relina isn't putting some of these things together. The fact that Zex seems to be a hero of the peace crafts, even though that hasn't, as I recall, was not directly established. She knows that she's a peace craft, and that this man seems to have interacted with Zex, which he'll refer to him as. But to see him talk about Zex being such a young boy and doing this duel where somehow a 12-year-old or whatever is able to fight so fiercely with a rapier that he breaks the foil of his opponent, this elderman, and insists on continuing. This child is terrifying.
Yes.
And makes you wonder what Zex is capable of, because to your point of what we should see as we go forward, I don't know how much of this idea of being a knight or a hero has affected his perception of what he must do. Must he be an equal or underdog in order to feel like he has accomplished anything, due to his stunted idea of what conflict is from having been a peacecraft?
Yes.
The final point that I'll go on before letting you do any cleanup here is our moment with Trays.
Yes.
I am now seeing what it is that you meant when I had that card built up, right?
Yeah.
So for those who have been watching with us, you'll know what I'm talking about. For those who haven't, I'm going to have to do a quick bit of explanation. We see that Trays is musing to himself about Zex acting on his own accord, talking about how these Rocco Roma fellers do what they are doing, which is to be wary of Zek's actions, muses to himself about how, he's doing all right. He's not doing anything that's harming anything. I'm going to let him do what he's going to do. While he's doing this, he's passing these two women who are having a conversation, and one of their children, who seems to be a toddler, who's barely able to walk, is mostly doing crawling, crawls to the edge of a pier. And while the mother would run up to try and save the child, Treize stops her. And she starts getting frightened. Rather than pushing him away, she acknowledges Treize's place, and she pulls away, closes her eyes, waiting to hear the splash of this toddler fall into the water. This child has been chasing a butterfly, and in order to reach that butterfly, as it flies away, the child stands and then walks over to their mother. And this appears to be the first of seeing what Treize might be about, which is without conflict, without struggle, there is no growth. To have no struggle, to have a perfect peace, means that there will not be growth and that life will become stagnant, that people will become stagnant. And that will be interesting to see, one, if my interpretation is correct, but two, where you can go with that, especially when Oz seems to have its own issues.
Yes, so it is. I sort of have a love-hate relationship with the scene because I love it because it's sort of emblematic of what you say, and even hinting at this sort of like extreme optimism that implies Treize has for the human race and sort of what is at its nature, and you know, whether it's quote unquote good or evil or competent or capable. And so like that's sort of so weird coming from what has so far been the main villain of our show. It's a side that just doesn't get explored very much when we kind of come across these characters. And so I like that it's just sort of perfectly emblematic of it. The problem is that to get to that moment, it's just really hard for me to believe. It's hard for me to just like, okay, you wrote a scene where the mother doesn't desperately try to save her child. It's just like, okay, Treize, it's in your hands. I don't feel good about it. So I wish there was another way to kind of get us there. But I'll give it a pass because I just like what it is saying, even though it gets there in a very ridiculous manner.
Well, I wonder, though, because of the way that they're treating this like a older society where Treize acting as some sort of duke or viscount or what have you, has precedence in actions and decisions over someone who might be a common individual or someone of lesser rank. They are supposed to defer to these individuals, whether or not they want to, because that is the way that society is built. So I'm curious how much the Romafellers have affected the people that Treize interacts with and how much of that has gone to his head. You mentioned this optimism, but I wonder how much of it is naturalism, the idea that nurture versus nature, you have to let nature take its course. I wonder how much of it is what will eventually be seen as a God complex, but I'm trying to have all these ideas come out at once so our listeners might watch with us and try to make these deductions themselves, but also to throw off the scent in case I have hit something way too early and have us be able to think of it from different angles.
Well, and I don't know. I think those are all fair reads. And I think sort of the thing I want to point out is that, you know, there have been all these sort of scenes that Treize mostly has by himself. Especially recently, there have been all these little moments that make us think like, well, this isn't kind of what I expected. We're going in a bit of a different direction here. What is actually going on? It's just wasn't my original read of the character. And so as long as you're kind of now not just being set in your old views and kind of open to where the character could be going or what these things could be saying, that's fine. And I think your read on sort of this Romefeller kind of pecking order had been established is interesting. And I never sort of considered it before you've said it. But I kind of like it, and it kind of helps me digest the scene a lot more easily. So I'll sort of let that simmer for a bit, and I could probably lean on that the next one or two times I watch it, and we'll see how it still feels after that. So I think that's a fair read by you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. So do we want to go the way we go?
Yes. Just a real quick, though, I guess, so just a little manga update.
Please.
As I sort of mentioned, this is kind of where the story picks up again after that Siberia fight. We sort of very briefly skip over everybody else. Velina doesn't get to do anything because she already had she's not trying to get revenge on Anna. She was trying to get revenge on Hiro. So we just kind of go on board this boat that's heading to Antarctica. Hiro wakes up there. Troa is there disguised as an Oz soldier. Somehow they have teamed up with Noin, and Noin's bringing them back. And then from there, it basically plays out like the episode does, I guess, except that they're on a ship fighting over water than being on an airship fighting in the air and in the land and snow.
I mean, I suppose that is interesting only because the dynamics of the battle change dramatically. If they're in an air carrier, it makes sense why there would be more units, and it makes sense as to how they would be able to get around ice flows and dramatic weather if they're above the cloudscape.
Yeah.
It also keeps them either, if not off the radar, at least out of the weather that could affect their own.
Mm-hmm.
If they're on a ship of a carrier of some kind, not only is it typically slower than air travel, so we would be waiting a lot longer or having a lot more time pass, we would also see a lot more difficulty, not just in terms of the weather affecting them, but also how the ship would be able to cut through the ice flow.
Correct. I think the implication is that they sort of left from Siberia and had to go all the way to the South Pole undetected. They still have the same amount of time pass. It's like a month or so when Hiro wakes up. But like you say, it does create sort of other problems to do. And I just don't, maybe they had like a limit of how many chapters they were allowed to publish, but I don't know why we needed to skip so much of what happened in between to kind of help set that up a little better. But here
well, I wonder too how much of it is, okay, we had these episodes to pad out these characters. That means that we've now filled the quota of time. Oh shit, how do we get them there to keep things up with the manga?
Yeah. So the manga came out like 20 years later. Like it wasn't,
you know what I mean.
Yeah, so like I don't know what sort of their goal is. They spend a lot of time on the first 4 episodes, and then they just skip large gaps of episodes. So I'm not sure overall what the function is. As I mentioned before, it seems like they expect you to have already seen the show, so they feel fine skipping around a lot and avoiding some of these more character moments to just get sort of the big highlights. Not
sure, it's
sure.
the same thing that happened with my 3-volume G Gundam series, which I don't think I have anymore. I found after I started looking for it for the show.
Yeah.
The series of manga only hits the major plot points. There are very few, if any, of these interactions that we would have seen in between. Like, I don't know that we get to see the Pharaoh Gundam. I don't think that we get to see some of these other in-betweeners.
Yeah.
Everything that happens in Tokyo Shinjuku seems to be truncated. So I don't know. It's definitely, I think, a thing for when you make a manga after a series instead of making your series based on a manga. You have to figure out how you can make it so that way it doesn't take forever. If you're just re-releasing a show as a manga, you don't need every episode. So how do you edit it down?
Yeah, I could buy that. All right, yes. So now on to the way we go. As I alluded to, movies have often used computers as like magical technology or easy plot devices. And it was no more pressing than it was in the early 90s, where people sort of understood, had a general awareness of computers, but not much insight into how they actually worked or how the internet worked. And so, like, here's another classic. Here's a sort of a really, truly bad case of the 90s, because it's harder to kind of get away with this now. We're just a lot more educated. Kids are learning computer programming in elementary school now. So, like, it's going to pretty much die out from here. But, like, the heyday of the 90s, computers solving all kinds of problems, giving all the characters all the information they need. It doesn't matter that the butler probably wouldn't know how to use a computer so well or be so easy to scour these chat rooms and get information across through secret channels. We don't care. It's just, it does whatever we need it to do. And in 1995, what do we know? We're on board.
You know, it's funny that you say that because, again, I referenced a film that I feel a lot of people would benefit from watching. It's a film called Hackers. It came out somewhere between 95 and 96, I believe, maybe a little later. Has, oh God, I just lost his name. It has a number of actors and actresses, the most notable one being a very young Angelina Jolie. But it is a bunch of these kids who are deep in hacker culture, or at least the perception of such. It's also, for my LGBT friends, a great place where you get to see non-binary individuals and people doing a lot of, if you'll excuse the term, gender fuckery. It is a worthwhile piece of the 90s to watch, the culmination of which is somehow being able to just instantly program a representative of a man who's supposed to be, oh God, what is it? The Leonardo da Vinci one where you have the man with several arms and legs.
Yeah, it's like the Vesuvian Man or something like that.
Yeah, the Vesuvian Man, I believe. So this bad hacker is able to make a virus that seems to be almost a perfect human. There's no like uncanny valley or anything. It's just a man, but he appears to be digital and is a virus. He didn't set up a studio to get a picture of a guy or take video and turn it into a GIF. And I don't even know if GIFs existed at this point. And yes, it's GIF. The guy who does not like it being called GIF can put his bits inside a jar of Jif with a J. But also, when they are hacking, they represent at the climax of this thing a bunch of them on hoverboards surfing through circuitry to find the place and do all manner of cyberpunk bullshit to break through the wall to help them eventually get rid of the virus before it ruins everyone. It is a monumental piece of the 90s in that it is large. It can clog a pipe system, but in the way that you lot should enjoy. And I feel like Skeyhill, you haven't seen Hackers before?
I don't think I have, though. A lot of what you're saying does sound familiar.
Yes. Once again, I can't recommend it enough. Watch Hackers. I'd always seen that it was on like TV as like one of those throwaway movies that you put on at like 2 p.m. on USA. But my wife sat me down and made me watch it, and it's just glorious.
Yeah, I have the cereal when I do engage in cereal, although I usually mix it with oatmeal, is like Grape Nuts. Well, it's technically a store brand Grape Nuts. But
sure.
The store brand Grape Nuts clearly knows who its audience is, because on the back of the box is how does the internet work? And it has a picture of like the highway road system. And it has like all these little things pointing at cars and the road and the off ramps and things like that. And so what I have is a cereal made for old people and an illustration on the back to explain to them how the internet works using the information superhighway metaphor. It's very fun to read. Yes.
Yes, especially since I hate telling you this. That's exactly how people marketed it back in the 90s.
Yeah, like they're sticking with it.
They're targeting people who were probably in their 20s or so in the 90s.
Yeah.
And remembering that the 90s at this point is 30 years ago.
Just some old people don't understand how the internet works. Maybe they're afraid of it. I don't know. Here we are.
A lot of them are.
What are your away we go?
So my way we go happened to happen after watching the episodes of the week. My wife watches a channel on YouTube called Scarfing Scarves. And this woman, she has a very specific show that started off her ramp to success within her niche of elegant gothic Lolita, or EGL. It's a style of clothing. I think I've mentioned this before.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
But in the episode of last week Lolita News, she goes off on a mini tirade towards the end of the episode about why the District of Columbia and Puerto Rico should be states at this point, and there's really no reason why other than to screw everything over. And when I was thinking on it, if we added 2 states simultaneously and made ourselves a 52 state nation, we would have one playing card for every state at that point, with 2 jokers being removed, and you can do whatever you want with the jokers. But that means that you could effectively make a deck that was designating each of the states to a different card. And that was just in association to the Shuffle Alliance and the idea of the playing card motif.
You wanted the America to be the Shuffle Alliance. That's not so bad. That'd be kind of fun.
Yeah, and just wondering, like, what would you designate Massachusetts as a card? So what would you designate Rhode Island as a card? It's probably like a 2 of clubs. But you know what I mean? Yeah,
but now I'm worried, like, which state is going to get offended that they feel like they've gotten the shaft?
Well, every state is going to feel like that, but that's the beauty of it, is that each state could have or each region could have their own variation on it, where they just shuffle whoever is in what slot. So it doesn't matter that, in Massachusetts, we might call ourselves the Ace of Hearts or whatever, because when you go down to Florida, they might consider themselves the Ace of Hearts or Ace of Spades or whatever slot that they didn't get. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's like all the Monopoly versions all the states have.
I'm sorry?
Yeah, like all the like there's like Massachusettsopoly.
Oh, the USAopoly scam.
And all those
I know what
things.
you're talking about now.
Yeah. Okay, so that's good. That's Bob. We've had a good chat so far today. Now let's top it off with a nice trip over to the Nerd Corner. For me, I was very excited to find this out this week. Somebody was kind enough to give me this information. I don't know, maybe about 10 episodes or so, I had told you all about Don Hertzfeld, great animator, having come out with the World of Tomorrow Part 2.
Yes.
A sequel to his Academy Award nominated short film from about 5 years ago. The sequel came out in 2017, but I only recently found out about it. Well, today, or maybe it was yesterday, the 3rd part came out, which probably means...
It wasn't announced, it came out.
Yes, it came out, which probably means a feature version of the 3 together, just like in Life is Beautiful, will not be that far behind. But if you want to support talented artists, go buy the version now, watch it. It's like $5, 20 minutes. Get a very interesting look at the world that we live in today through the lens of tomorrow. Bob, what have you got?
Well, as I mentioned earlier in the podcast, I had to deal with some mental health stuff, just taking a day, 2 days off because I just my anxiety was ruling over me and keeping me from doing anything. I'm behind on getting grocery stuff done and whatever, but there's a point to this. I had been holding off and only got out last night the final bits of information that I needed to solidify my spot as a guest game master at the end of November for Fuck Cancer Roll Dice.
Okay.
And I'm going to be running a game that I've been working on since earlier this year. I've been working on this as a game dev with my fellow more capable dev Anthony Domenico, also known as Librarian PC on Twitter and the like. We're trying to make a D6 based system, and one of the people that I had playtest it is the person that runs Fuck Cancer Roll Dice every Thanksgiving weekend. So I am going to be running it on the noon Eastern time slot on November 27th. And if you want to be around to watch it, now you know to be keeping an eye out for it. And if you should want to play it, keep an eye on the Fuck Cancer Roll Dice concept. There should be a release coming soon for one of the 4 or 3 seats that will be open. So keep an eye out for that.
So what does guest GMing mean? Do you sort of take the reins from someone's campaign and they have to like clue you in on how it all works?
No. So this is going to be a kind of variety stream where different people will run different one-shot games over the course of about 3 hours of play. I'm going to be running a short one-shot based off of the what we're currently calling Project Henshin Heroes until we have a solidified name for that playbook. It's going to be a subsection of a greater neutral genre neutral system called Niche. That is the working title that we're going with so far. And what will happen is I'm going to effectively do all the lengthier time parts where I'm going to make for them the motifing and themes of a story. And I will we're going to use cards as part of a layout. I think we're currently working with a 6-card layout, 3 in the front, 3 in the back. They all mean different things. I'm not going to go too in depth with it right now, but I'm going to effectively pre-make the bulk of their character layout, with the exception of the cards that let them choose their motifing and their personal vibes. So that way they have a character that they can feel comfortable with. And then we're going to run them through just what we would call an episode, or, typically it would be called an adventure. The Niche system plays off the idea that your players are your cast members, and your game master, also known as your executive producer, is helping to produce a show with you.
All right. Well, that sounds like it would be great fun for all you G Gundam fans out there, and for all of you who hate cancer, which is probably everyone that isn't a crab, definitely check out that stream.
I love you for that dumb joke.
Well, we would like to thank Lev Van Rensselaer for keeping an eye on those audio boards today. And thanks this week, as every week this season, to Bob Skerry for joining me. Bob, you got any plugs?
Certainly. So if you want to hear me blather on about anything and everything, you can go and catch me on Twitch as Bob Skerry VOA. I'm a variety streamer who plays video games, and hopefully sometime in the next few weeks might even start getting people together to play some Dread. We can talk about Dread next week, though. You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and a slew of other websites by my handle, Bob Skerry VOA. And you can hire me. You can either go to my website, bobskerryvoa.com, and listen to my demos, or you can find me on voices.com, Casting Call Club, and a few other places. If you want your game, your role-playing game at home, to have a few voice lines done so you don't have to worry about your character voices, if you want to scare the hell out of your kids at night on Halloween, or if you just want to have somebody who can do your presentation for you, contact me and let me know.
And I am your host, Patrick Skeyhill. You can find my features, documentaries, short films, video essays, animations, behind-the-scenes footage, and so much more at quixoticunited.com, and some sort of social media that resembles that in name. Thank you all for listening. Bob, tell the audience how high of a tree you can climb.
I can't.